My grandfather was born in 1928 in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and he served in the Air Force. He met my grandmother in college. They both attended the University of Illinois. She lived in a sorority house. She used to sneak out at the very middle of the night to go and meet with him because he was a physics and aerospace engineer major, and his classes had him up all night working, and she would go and keep him company, and they would sneak her back into the sorority house, and they were married ever since. He flew on his own in private planes, and he would fly out of Burbank or Van Nuys Airport or Camarillo or Oxnard. And when he lost his piloting license, he still didn't want to give up talking about airplanes, so he became a docent at the Museum of Flying out in LA. I don't think he could have not been a docent because community involvement and teaching were some of his biggest passions. Aside from being a docent, he also volunteered in the schools to go and do quick little lessons on physics and the space shuttle, where he talked about thrust and how the space shuttle takes off and the science behind it. He would bring in little models that he had built himself, and he would also judge their science fairs. That was his favorite thing to do. My favorite stories are going over to his house and him teaching me how to fly a plane on the flight simulator, because even though he didn't have his pilot's license, he could still fly even if it was through technology. And he was also just really involved in his community politically. He joined every Democratic Party committee that he possibly could. My grandmother, Reatha Faye Katz, she is from the Midwest as well, Champaign, Illinois. She was an English teacher and writer, and that's where I really attribute my love for writing myself, because she was an avid reader. Nora Roberts was her favorite. I can't count how many of those Nora Roberts books she had. Unfortunately, she had a lot of health problems and passed away in November of 2016. Her service was at Riverside National Cemetery, and it was lovely. We had a Jewish service where we were able to bring our rabbi and say the mourner's Kaddish and speak a little bit about what we loved about her, whether it was her cooking, the stories that she was able to tell, because she loved telling stories. That was her favorite thing in the entire world. So my grandmother and my grandfather were married until both of their deaths. And it was very sweet to see sort of the way that my grandfather mourned for my grandmother. And he often called me and told me how much he missed her. My grandfather passed away in December of 2018 after years of battling COPD due to smoking. At my grandfather's funeral, because he was a vet, they presented the flag to us. It was quiet as the two officers folded the flag on top of his coffin. Having them both buried at Riverside National Cemetery is super important for me. I've chose to stay close to them for the duration of their lives because I couldn't imagine not being able to stay in contact with them at any time. I called my grandfather every day until his death, and he called me every day. So we're in constant contact. Same thing with my grandmother. I would constantly leave her messages. So being able to just have a place to go and visit them and talk to them, even if they're not saying anything back directly, is really important to me. I go out there and I do a lot of writing. My grandmother's the reason I'm a poet, the reason I'm a writer, the reason I teach English. And my grandfather is the one who encouraged me to keep going with my schooling. And if I don't keep going with my schooling, I know that someone is going to come down and strike me from the heavens. And if I don't get that PhD soon, it's going to be him. To this day, whenever I'm flying, I always try and get a seat above the wing because it just reminds me of the times he would force me to look outside the window. And whenever the flaps went up or down, he would tell me the physics equation. And so I still hear him in the back of my head as I'm flying, looking out at the wing and the flaps going up or down. And I hear him in the back of my head, and it's very sort of a good memory to have of him.